Okay. Hi everyone, I'm Shweta and I welcome you all to today's episode of PhD the Philosophical Drama. At the beginning of this episode, I would like to express that we strongly condemn the Russian attacks on Ukraine and we stand in solidarity with the people of Ukraine. In 2005, Steve Jobs delivered this iconic commencement speech at Stanford. It basically talks about three highlights from his life, where he talks about different stories related to events from his life. The first one being about connecting dots, where he talks about how he dropped out of college and post that how he took this calligraphy course where he learned about different fonts and typographies and spacings, which was then eventually applied to the Mac computers. And what he has to say is that it was great that he dropped out of college because if that wouldn't have happened, he wouldn't have taken the calligraphy course. And if that wouldn't have happened, they would not have applied that beautiful typography to the Mac computers. So, what he has to say in those regards, and I quote, is that you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So, you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. The second story that he narrates is about love and loss, where he talks about how they found Apple and then how he got fired from his own company at the age of 30. And then according to him, that is one of the best things that could have happened to him. And what he says is that sometimes life hits you in the head with a brick. Don't lose faith. I'm convinced that the only thing that kept me going was that I love what I did. You've got to find what you love. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. And the third and the final story that he describes is about death. And what he says is your time is limited. So don't waste it living someone else's life. Have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary. Stay hungry, stay foolish. Our guest for today, Dr. Devdeep Sarkar, he followed his heart and intuition. He finished his PhD in theoretical astrophysics and post that took the career change plunge. He did a master's in computational finance post his PhD and now is working as director senior trading strategist at one of the leading financial institutions in New York. So let's call him over and understand this beautiful transition journey from him.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How are you, Shweta?
Well, good. I'm good. So, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for taking time out. Welcome to our show.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. And hello, everyone.
Yeah. So, the first thing that I will start about is I want to know how your PhD journey was. Like, describe your PhD journey. Was it a lot of people have a lot of struggles during their PhD, student PI relationships? How was it for you?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely a great question. So I think the way I think about it is the PhD journey is essentially a travel through a long tunnel. We know that there is light at the end of the tunnel, but while you are in the tunnel, there could be different areas that are quite dark, right? Which happens to many of us. And definitely, I wouldn't say that it was completely an exception from that. But then sometimes, depending on whether you are doing a PhD in experimental sciences or in experiments or theory, things differ, right? Because when you're doing
Hmm.
experiments, your instruments can go bad and a lot of things can happen. So I
Yeah.
was actually to some extent lucky that I was doing my PhD in theoretical physics, more specifically theoretical astrophysics and cosmology. And to a great extent, because it was more theoretical in nature, I did not have various exogenous factors driving my day-to-day activities, such as an instrument, etc. But of course, there are
Okay.
collaborations and all of that that you still have to be part of. So a little bit about my PhD. So I decided to do my PhD in the United States, and I finished
Mm-hmm.
my master's at IIT Kanpur, and then I had come over to the US. I finished my PhD at University of California at Irvine, and my PhD was in theoretical cosmology and astrophysics, as I just mentioned. The advantages that I had was the group that I was part of was really comprised of young scientists, so everybody was tremendously hardworking. So that was the
Okay.
good part, but at the same time, the expectations were really high. And I was the first PhD student of my advisor. So there are always
Oh, okay.
some issues that come with that, right? Because then your advisor probably doesn't have enough experience mentoring someone. That said, he was extremely hardworking, really well known in the field. And the fact that he was really hardworking also motivated me to put in that hard work. So I
Right.
think the journey was more or less smooth, I would say, mostly because I didn't have some issues that I hear from people where they are writing a paper and then they put it on their advisor's desk, and a month later they haven't even heard back from them, right? These
Yeah.
things have happened in the past. I have heard from my friends. My story would be rather opposite. There was one time I completed my PhD in 2009 and I went to Irvine in 2006. But I think it was in 2007 or so where one day I was working pretty late, as most PhD students do. It was at 2 a.m. or 1:30 a.m. I sent him a draft, and then I went to bed, hoping that okay, I can relax for a little bit. I woke up, I don't know, about 8 or 9 a.m. and I saw a reply from him with all the suggestions how we can improve the paper. So
Oh my
that's
God.
how fast he was. Yeah. So,
So he was up all night.
I mean, I don't know when used to sleep and when he used to wake up, but by the time I was up, whole review of the paper was in my inbox. So I think, it
Oh my
was
God.
challenging to some extent because he was,
Yeah.
really high achiever. But at the same time, I think his tenacity and, the way he worked also helped me. So that's kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
how the whole process went.
Yeah, that's great. That's wonderful to hear. So, which means that you had like really nice time during your PhD,
Yeah.
and it was like a really nice and fruitful journey for you. So then, what made you change your fields? Like, were you still interested in astrophysics at the end of your PhD, or were your, interests changing towards the end? Was it something
Yeah.
like that?
So, okay, so I'll tell you the story, but just to answer that second part of the question, my interest in astrophysics and cosmology was still intact by the time I finished my PhD. And as a result,
Okay.
actually, right after my PhD, I did not change my career. I had moved on to do my postdoctoral research. That was in University of Michigan, Ann Arbor. In University of
Okay.
Michigan, Ann Arbor, I started my postdoc in 2009. I did that for a couple of years. So to tell you a little bit about why I changed. So I think the story is a little long, but going back again to my PhD years, which was from 2006 to 2009,
Mhm.
in 2007 and 2008, there was a financial crisis in the United States and the whole world. So
Right.
before that, I did not really have much ideas about finance. But during the crisis, everybody who was here or anywhere, they could not have not noticed what was going on in the world. Every day on
Mhm.
TV, you would hear how the world was falling apart. Nobody knew whether anybody would have any jobs or not going forward.
Yeah.
Stock markets were down significantly, and then people were thinking, like people who were close to retirement, they were thinking, they might not have any money to live for the rest of their lives, etc. And the more I heard about these in the news, I got really interested in understanding how financial markets work, how economies of the whole world work, how they're interconnected,
Wow.
etc.
Okay.
So while I was doing my PhD, I was on the side learning about all these things. And I also started kind of investing a little bit. But PhD students, as you know, don't really have enough money. But whatever little I had, I started investing, and I started to understand what was going on. So the more I learned about it, my interest grew over time. Then I bought some more books about finance, how finance, the whole markets work. And the more I read about it, my interest grew even further. And then also, I have to say that I am a little bit of a nerd for mathematics, and which probably explains why I was doing physics PhD. But at the same time, the mathematics that you have that define all the financial models, etc., those also kind of interested me quite a bit. So I was there at the end of my PhD. I still wanted to do physics, so I went for my postdoc. But at the same time, inside me, I started having this urge to also know more about and then kind of understanding what would it be like if I were in that field. I did not know anyone
Right.
in finance, so it was
Oh, okay.
a complete unknown territory for me. But still, the interest grew over time, and it didn't happen overnight. It took years almost. So that is one part. And the other part is, again, it comes back to that nerdiness. So when I actually joined physics, or when I wanted to do my PhD, my vision in my mind, I was probably naive, but the vision was, Einstein standing in front of a blackboard writing equations. I thought physics PhD is like that. The more I was part of it, I realized that much of the theories in physics were already in place. What physicists, I mean, it's not all the time, but mostly what physicists have to do now is to devise either experiments or observations in terms of cosmology, because you can't really run experiments, and then try to corroborate many of the theories that already exist. So
Okay.
even in physics, the work nowadays involves a lot of, coding, maybe data analysis, a lot of
Hmm.
statistics, and
Hmm.
all of that, right? It's not just you write equations all night and
Yeah.
you, oh,
Yeah.
hooray moment. So I realized over time that all those skill sets that I was using in physics could also be used in finance. So, you can
Oh, wow.
essentially in
Okay.
finance also, you need the same skill set. You have to analyze data, you have to understand what the data tells you and take action. So that was another, parallel story. Also, the third thing is in physics, the feedback loop is really slow, meaning, let's say you do an experiment today or you do something theoretical today, and that can be probably in action many years down the line. So just to give you an example,
Right.
one of the papers I wrote back in 2008, the or not the infrastructure, but the framework we laid out in that paper is being used today. Well, that's almost a decade later, right? Or more than a decade
Yeah.
later. So you have to wait a lot to see your work in action, or like, that's the feedback loop I talk about, and that's very slow. In finance, it's super fast, so it just happens very quickly. So while I was
Okay.
doing my postdoc in University of Michigan Ann Arbor between 2009 and 2011, by 2010, I decided that, well, I have done physics, I still love it, but this finance field, I would just like to check it out. So even though I still love physics and everybody was extremely, I think, helpful, my manager or my boss at that point of time for my postdoc, he was probably the best person ever I had met at that point of time. He told me that, okay, I'll support you, finish the projects that you are already on, mentor the students that you are already mentoring, but then, if you want to switch fields, I'm happy if you want to do that. So that
Wow.
was tremendous. So the support I got from him was more than overwhelming, I must say. So, that was the journey. So at the end of that postdoc, the postdoc could have been for 3 years, but we ended it after 2 years because I wanted to switch fields. So in 2011, I left physics to join finance. So
Oh,
the
wow.
journey, as I said, it was a little long story, but it had a lot of it wasn't just one thing that triggered it. It was multiple things.
Yeah, but I think it's a very coherent journey. I mean, applying something from your field that you're working to another field that you want to or work or you're interested in. I mean, that's really commendable. Yeah, and especially when you say that you did not really have any person or any guidance per se, particularly for finance. But so was it like among your friends or your family when you decided to change your fields? Was there any resistance? Because I mean, there is always this fear that okay, this is a very drastically different field. Even when you are saying that that there are so many parallels,
Yep.
but this is very scary. So was that the case?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there are two sides of it. So first of all, so just to take a step back, when I decided to move to finance, I didn't also because because I was in the US, I also did not have the right kind of visa to start working. So, and also I did not know anyone in finance. So what I decided to do was I decided to actually go for another course called Masters of Science in Computational Finance, and that I did between 2011 and 2012. That was at Carnegie Mellon University. So that was kind of to bridge the gap between my physics world and the finance world that
Okay.
was unknown to me. But that course is extremely good. Carnegie Mellon is one of the best for this particular program. And then it has a combination of statistics, financial mathematics, programming, as well as some business school, curriculum in the curriculum. So that extremely is very helpful for anybody who wants to make such a switch. That said, to go for that, this is one course where you don't get any funding. There is a little bit of funding
Okay.
for some fellowship, but that doesn't cover the whole thing. So the amount of loan, the student loan you have to take is pretty, large amount, right? So, and then also again, I didn't know anything about finance. So when I first broke the news to my parents, they were apprehensive, of course. They were a little afraid because of the reasons that you brought up, right? This is a field that they also didn't know about. They knew that I was studying physics for a long time. So they didn't know what that unknown world would look like and what it would be for me to go into that journey, to embark on into that journey. That said, I think they were extremely supportive. So there was no resistance, even though they thought that, it could be a little bit unknown world. They were extremely supportive. And then my close friends and I have a cousin and relatives in the US, they were also tremendously supportive. So I would say that all my near and dear ones were extremely supportive of me. And that
That's great.
actually helped me, actually embark on that journey. Otherwise, I would not have been able to do that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I think the support of family and friends is something which is very important for, I think, for everything, of course, but
Yep.
transitions like these, it's even more crucial. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
couldn't agree more. Absolutely. And without their support, I would not have been able to take that leap of faith. And I would not have been here where I am today. So I really want to thank all of them even today.
So, what about you? Like, I know of people who are not. I mean, this is not your case, but who are not happy in their own field, but and they want to transition.
Hmm.
But what they think about transitions is that it's going to be very overwhelming. Also, because if I have to go back to college, I have to start from level
Correct.
zero again,
Hmm.
and not just that, if I have to go back to college, I have to be with the students who are of the current generation, who will be
Correct.
younger than me.
Hmm.
So that's not going to be easy because there's always a difference of thinking and opinions and a lot of things. So
Absolutely.
did you think anything like that also during that journey? Was it overwhelming in that way or in that sense?
I think so. First of all, it's a great point. So I'll just give you first of all the statistics. The Carnegie Mellon school and the Masters of Computational Finance program that I mentioned, and I think you were alluding to the fact that there'd be some age difference, right? So if I think about it, I went to that program when I was about 32. So
Okay.
like my early 30s. But the average age of that class was probably in early 20s. So there was
Okay.
definitely a huge difference already there, right? So what you were saying is absolutely
Yeah.
correct. Now, I did not really have any issues or anything because everybody was super friendly. I think there were also the class was really diverse because there were some people who were coming from PhDs and postdocs, and some people were
Mm-hmm.
already working in the field of finance. Some people were fresh out of undergraduate. So as you can imagine, there were a lot of people from undergraduate that just directly came there. So as I said, the difference in the average age and my age was almost a decade. But we didn't really feel anything like that because, after all,
Okay.
you are all in the same journey. right? So I think it's more about how you feel as opposed to how, I mean, if you have that inhibition, I think it's always, we always have that. But then I think once you just overcome it and once you take that leap of faith, you will realize that people will be there every step of the way to help you out, to hold your hand. It doesn't matter, age doesn't matter, because everybody is in the same class, doing the same homework. They all have the same goal in mind, that they have to get some internship, then they have to get a full-time job. And I don't think, even from the perspective of employers, I did not see that there was any discrimination in terms of
Okay,
the
that's
age
great.
difference, right? So yes, it feels intimidating when you are about to take that leap of faith and take that first step. But once you are across the fence, more than likely you will realize that people are there to just walk beside you and
Help
walk
you out.
with you, as opposed to create any other situation. So that's that. And I think the other point that I want to mention, and is that even in Carnegie Mellon, I think we became really good friends. The age difference really didn't matter at all. The other thing is active networking helps a lot in this, right? So if somebody
Yeah.
wants to do that switch, uh, even before you take that leap of faith, maybe you can talk to various people, because with, like, as time is moving on, it's very easy to do networking, and especially after COVID, most of the things are happening
Yeah.
online anyway.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
can always reach out on LinkedIn or other media to people you think are already in that field, and then talk to
Okay.
them and then see how it is
Yeah.
like to be in their shoes, right? So that way, before you actually jump into that, you will have some ideas actually, in fact.
So did you find someone like that? Like, did you contact people and find some people who were actually working in the finance field, and did you get help from those kind of people during your journey?
Yeah, so when I decided that I would be taking the course, I did reach out to a lot of people, because, again, for me, it was not just leaving the field. I was also taking a tremendous amount of loan. So, it
Hmm.
was, of course, it was a risky position at that point of time. So I
Yeah.
did want to do my due diligence and then reach out to people, talk to some people in finance. Before that, I did not really know anyone. But then I tried to talk to as many people as I could. And then also, I would say that some of the CMU alumni, they were also tremendously helpful, which is why even today, whenever there is something at CMU, I try to help out as well. Because when I was on the other side, when
Hmm.
I didn't know anything, and I was trying to reach out to people, and I was trying to understand what it would be like if I took that leap of faith, they helped me out. So as a result, I also try to do the same in when anything happens in recent years, or I'll still do the same
Yeah.
in the coming years.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Uh, so tell me when about your transition days. Like, you were saying that people need internships, or
Mhm.
during the 2 years of your masters. How was it during the 2 years of your masters? Like,
So the
was
master's
it
program is actually 1.5 years. So it actually started in
okay?
August 2011 and it ended in December 2012. These
Mm-hmm.
courses, they are broadly also classified as masters in financial engineering. These are typically quite intense. The reason for that is only in 3 semesters, they are essentially trying to teach you everything, right? Now, you can't, it's not like a PhD where you are master of one thing, right? In PhD, it's
Mm-hmm.
more focused, right? You know more and more about less and less. That's what PhD is all about. But then this one is about more kind of broadening your spectrum.
Broader.
So as I said, we had classes in financial mathematics, we had statistics, we had computer science classes, and then we had business classes. So all of those, all kind of crammed into just a 1.5 year program, or just 3 semesters and one internship in the middle. So of course it would be intense. There was a lot of homework. We studied, sometimes. So these classes were in the evening, after hours, so after office, because people who were part-time students were actually working full-time. So they would come after their work. So the classes were held in the evening. Classes would end around 8:30. We would have dinner, and then we would probably do our homework until almost 1 a.m., 2 a.m., etc. and then again start next day. So there was a lot of bonding between students, but at the same time, it was hard work. Also, just after the first semester or during the first semester, you actually have to apply for internship. So at some point of time, you are doing your homework, you are building your resume, you are going to the career counselor for mock interviews, and you are interviewing for actual internship. So it can be quite overwhelming from that aspect. But which is why I think choosing a right school, if one decides to do that, is important, because if you have a good career counselor, if you have
Hmm.
solid curriculum, then those definitely help out. But after all, uh, you just have to do it, because when you are jumping into this, you know that you only have a few months to, in fact, get all of this done. So there is no choice in that.
Okay. Okay.
But I know that we are
Um,
talking a lot about the program, but just to make sure, you don't really have to go to a school to make this transition. There are a lot of
yeah,
people
I
who
was
just,
actually going to ask you that.
yeah, yeah. So you can definitely go from physics to finance, and in fact, or any other field. In fact, in the last 10 years or so, many physicists and applied mathematicians, etc., they are going into data science too. So that's
Yes.
actually one field which have been flourishing quite a bit. If you think about, uh, so again, taking a step back, why it's actually a little harder if you're in mathematics or physics to do something outside of your field. Because let's say if you're in
Hmm.
economics, you don't just have to become a professor. There are lots of economic studies institutes, many government institutions need economists. So there are various fields you can go to. If you are in biology, depending on exactly what field you are, there are lots of industry jobs that are available. If you are in
Right.
experimental, physics, there are now many other semiconductor jobs,
Hmm.
laser, and
Hmm.
lots of things are out there. If you are doing theoretical physics or just, applied mathematics or just pure mathematics, it feels like that maybe there are less opportunities for you out there. But it felt like
Hmm.
20 years ago, but not anymore. I think
Yeah.
nowadays there are lots of opportunities out there. And the great thing is, similar to your program, there are other universities also, when they realize that the number of PhD students that are coming in every year, it's like a pyramid, right? Lots of PhD students coming in, only some of them will be doing postdoc, and only few of them will
Yeah.
ultimately be a professor. So the universities now realize that, and then they are already doing seminars and classes
Yes.
where they are teaching students what to do besides just the field that you are working on.
Academia. Yes,
Exactly.
yes, yes. That's great. And a lot of universities have started these things. They also have courses and extra courses where you can add
Yeah,
on to
absolutely.
uh, uh, your subject of knowledge, and maybe expand in those fields.
Yeah.
That's something that a lot, or maybe most of the universities are doing, and that's great, I think. So in your financial world, do you now still use your lessons from PhD? As in, when I say lessons, I mean philosophical lessons, like
Yes.
the things that you learned from your PhD. Do you still apply that?
Yes, and again, that particular thing is irrespective of what subject you have in your PhD, right?
Hmm.
One of the things, I think, a couple of things that PhD students do have. I mean, number one is, I would say, well, there are a few things. So one of the things is, let's say you start on a project. In PhD, sometimes you will go in one path, and then you will realize after a while that, well, that path doesn't really get you anywhere, right? Maybe that's a dead
Hmm.
end, but then you have to steer and then go somewhere else. Maybe there is some other field which is, or another path which will probably lead you to a fruitful result. So that we learn in PhD. We fail multiple times. There is no,
Yeah.
as you mentioned upfront. I think there are very few PhD students who would say, "Well, we have never failed in any project." That would be very rare, right? So the fact that we know when to call something, but you can't just go on a failed project forever. Then you will spend 5 years and you will not have a PhD.
Yes.
So one skill set is that we know when to stop, when we know that, okay, no, this is a dead end, so let's take another path. And that happens in real life all the time, right? The other thing I would say is that PhD is, again, another thing about, it's an unknown research, in the sense that if you are when you're
Mm-hmm.
just taking classes, you are just doing homework, but then those problems have been solved previously. But in your
Yes.
PhD, you are trying to solve a problem that
It's
has
a
not
hypothesis.
been previously solved. And then in real life, in work, you are always encountering problems that have not been solved in the past. So then that kind of experience that you learn in PhD is applicable every day. And it doesn't matter which field you are in, no matter where you
Mm-hmm.
are, this is always going to come up, right? So another thing is perseverance. You could not have gotten a PhD unless you have perseverance. So I think that's very important in other fields as well. I would also say the teamwork aspect, right? So I think we did
Yeah.
a lot of collaborations, even though I did not work in experiment, but in theory, you collaborate with people across I mean, different universities, different countries,
Mm-hmm.
etc. And then that helps a lot, right? Because in any work, group teamwork is extremely important. So I think that is something that I learned in PhD that I still apply. The other thing is critical thinking, which maybe, it was specific to also something that I did in PhD, where that critical thinking and problem solving, these two aspects are also important in any field that you go to. So I think even though
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we feel like, well, we just did a PhD for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, and how will we apply into everyday life? There are lots and lots of applications, and most of those skill sets are actually transferable skill sets, I'd say.
So when, like with respect to this point, when you're getting hired, does the PhD experience matter for people who are hiring you, or it's not so much of an advantage?
So there are some roles which are more researchy roles or research type roles where having a PhD definitely is helpful. But then there would be some other roles where maybe they might prefer someone who is like fresh out of an undergraduate
Okay.
program. So there is a wide gamut of programs, and then there is no
Mm-hmm.
specific thing that, well, this particular place will only hire PhDs or undergraduates. I think even in a given institution, even in a given field, there could be various different teams where their requirements are different. Also, even within a team,
Okay.
we always hear about diversity, right? We hear about how it's
Right.
important, extremely important, to have more women in the workforce, because it is definitely skewed in one way, right? We definitely
Mm-hmm.
know how that is. It's a similar way. You can think about it also as a diversity in terms of experiences. In any team, you
Mm-hmm.
sometimes need that fresh mind, fresh out of undergraduate, very young, that kind of thinking. But you also need somebody who is a little bit more experienced, went
Mm-hmm.
through a program like a PhD, and then has all the advantages that we just talked about. So I think in
Okay.
any team you will find a wide variety of people, where some of them came directly from undergrad, some of them from master, some of them after PhD, some could be even they used to be a professor at some point of time and then they joined. So all different variety you will find.
Okay, so which means that while we are talking about this, the mindset of a person who's doing a PhD versus a mindset of a person, and you can correct me if I'm wrong because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not aware of this, mindset of a person in finance can be a little different. But then, if you are having a kind of experience from PhD, that can also be applied or help in your current field, is what you're trying to say.
Definitely, yeah. And then
Okay.
whenever I have worked at different teams, I might have worked already in 4 or 5 teams after moving to finance. In every
Mm-hmm.
team, I saw that there are people who directly came after their undergraduate, and then there are people who have done either PhD or masters or have worked in some completely different field for 5 years and then came over. So there is value in all of that, because everybody brings a different perspective to any
Perspective.
given problem, right? So, and I think the experiences from various different fields or various different facets of life is actually quite important.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, that's great to know. So talking about work-life balance,
Hmm.
in PhD, during PhD, at least this is from my experience and people who I know, your work-life balance is completely haywire. Is that the case in finance, or was that your case also in when you were doing PhD? And do you think that the work-life balance is a little better in your current field?
So, first of all, I mean, work-life balance is a topic that is discussed all the time, right? But let me just make a
Yeah.
first or like the different main differences. So, when you were in PhD, um, instead of thinking about the hours that you are working on an average on a daily basis, what is there is that it's just merged with your life. There is no proper weekend. There is
Yeah.
no, exact work hours, right? I mean, you might be working until 3 a.m., you get tired, you sleep, you might be waking up at 11 a.m. Sorry, yeah, 3 a.m. to 11 a.m. you wake up, and then maybe you are working in your shorts or whatever, right? So all of that. Now, COVID has also changed things, but if I think about
Hmm.
pre-COVID, in the industry, you have a little bit more structure. So,
Right.
like most grad students, I have to agree that I did not have a structure in PhD in the sense time-wise, right? As I mentioned, sometimes I would be working until 2 a.m., another day maybe
Yeah.
until 10 p.m. So I think, and then there was no proper weekend, right? As you know, or being a
Yes.
PhD yourself. So I think when I came to finance, and again, finance is a field which is known to be one where people work long hours. Now,
Hmm.
that said, what it did was it brought a structure to my life, right? And then any industry job, most industry jobs, some industry jobs could be a little bit different, but it still brings a structure. Now, I remember my first time in internship, we had to go by 7 a.m., right? And then we had a meeting at 7:15 a.m. every day. And then I think we used to go by maybe 6:30 a.m. and 7:15 a.m. was the first meeting. And then, it goes on, right, for quite a long time. And then both in my PhD and in my postdoc and in Carnegie Mellon, I did not have a structure. And as I said, I probably would be doing homework until 2, 3 a.m., but maybe waking up at 10 or 11 a.m.
Hmm.
So it
Hmm.
was extremely hard for me that first, like, week or 2 weeks or three, or maybe even the whole first month, that when you were starting every day at 6:30, by 2 p.m. I was sleepy. And then sometimes we
Hmm.
would go over stuff, and I was literally, it was hard for me to stay awake. And
Dazed.
by the way, one small information, I just don't even drink caffeine. So I don't drink, like, I mean, I drink some tea, but I don't drink coffee, etc. So it was even harder for me. So, but what I realized after maybe a month is that when you have that structure in life, it's actually extremely helpful for your health overall, over the long term,
Yes.
right? Irrespective of when you have to start, the fact that there is a specific start time, and then even if the ending time is, even if there is a 2 hour tolerance in there, you still know that, there is a specific night time when you are going to bed, right? Early to bed, early
Yeah.
to rise,
Yes.
those things that our parents used to talk about. Then weekends. PhD students don't have a proper weekend, as we discussed, but then in industry, you do have a proper weekend where you can take care of your
Yes.
stuff. Now, that doesn't mean that sometimes over the weekend you don't have to work a little bit, but it's nowhere close to a PhD life. So, when you talk about work-life balance, I would say that the main difference is probably the fact that you have more structure in your life
Hmm.
compared to when you were a PhD student. And I think that is probably healthy in the long term.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, but I mean, when we just talk about PhD, it's not just about PhD. I think overall in academia, the structure is a
Correct.
little less, unless if you put yourself in a very disciplined, structure, and decide that I
Yeah.
have to be, not working during weekends, and I have to sleep at this time, I have to wake up at this time. But otherwise, in academia, controlling this is really tough. Yes,
Yeah. And you
that's
have to
true.
have tremendous amount of, I think, mental strength to do that in academia, because peers around you, they are not
Yes.
doing it. So you are kind of, you have to be the odd one out. And you have to, so it requires much more mental power to do it,
Yeah.
mental strength to do it, than in regular field. Because if everybody is coming to work at 7 a.m., or it's for some places it could be 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., doesn't matter. I just gave one example, but there are lots of
Yeah.
workplaces where you start at 9 a.m., right? Probably. So the point is not about the exact time, whether it is 7:30 or 8 or 9. The point is that if everybody is coming at that time, And most people are leaving. I'm not saying you have to leave at 5 p.m., but maybe, 5 to 7 p.m., whenever, it doesn't matter. But at least you have that structure, which is easier to implement because everybody around you
Yes.
is also
Yeah.
doing the same thing. So you
Yeah.
don't have to have that much
Yeah.
mental strength to do it.
Pressure. Yes. Yes. It's about the trend which everybody follows. I mean,
Right.
yeah. 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 I get it. So this is the last thing that I want to ask you, but
Okay.
it's a lot philosophical. I started with talking about Steve Jobs' philosophies and his journey. Um, what is it that you follow? Do you have like a mantra or philosophy when you during this transition journey, especially? I'm sure there were times when you would have gotten stressed and would have, questioned your change, and you would have actually not believed that this will work. So how was it for you? What was it? Do you have a mantra which you follow and think that, okay, this is going to work? How do you make yourself believe that? How have you
Yeah,
done that?
definitely. So I might have a couple of mantras, not just one. But okay, the first and foremost thing I think is passion. And that's for me is number one important. So because I feel like if I'm not passionate about something, then it would be extremely hard for me to put that hard work or time into it. And that applies to,
Yeah.
of course, all PhD students for sure. Because if you don't love a subject, if you're not passionate about something, then why, first of all, it's beyond me, why would anybody do PhD if they are not passionate about something, right? Because you are embarking on a journey that would go on for 5 years. And we talked about this dark tunnel. Yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but it is still a long tunnel. Why
Yeah.
would you even enter that tunnel unless you think you will enjoy being inside the tunnel for some reason or the other, right? So that's number one. So being passionate. So, and it's the same thing applies to work as well. Some people tell me, like, for example, long hours we just talked about. So if you're passionate about doing something, then a long day at work may not seem as long. But if you hate the work that you are doing, even 4 hours would feel like forever. Right? I think
Hmm.
Einstein said something of that. So it's all about relativity. And same thing is, of course, the group of people you are working with, right? So the other thing that I try to think about is number one is passion. So try to do things that I'm passionate about. Because if you are doing that, then yes, there would be hard days, there will be hard weeks or even months. But then you know that you are doing it because you are still passionate about it. And uh,
Hmm.
no matter what the end result is, what the journey, you are enjoying it. And then you can only enjoy the journey if you are passionate about that. Otherwise, you can't. So that's my number one philosophy, I would say. Number two, I think, is not about like specific, but it's a little bit different. So when I think it was during the first time I heard somebody speak during my first internship. That person was a very successful person in the team, but then he said, like, I cannot guarantee that I will be the smartest person in the room. By all means, I might be the dumbest person in the room, but I can guarantee that I will work hard and work smart. And then that is
Hmm.
something that is in my control. I don't have a control on what brain power I was born with, right? And then I'll read, right? So I'll learn and I'll do the hard work in a smart way. So I think that is something which keeps us humble. I think the more you read, it keeps you humble because there's so much unknown out there. There's so much we don't know. And knowing that there's so much we don't know is very important to keep us humble. But at the same time, I think working hard and working smart. And working hard doesn't mean that you are going to be working all hours, but then just working to your strength. So if I am really good at something, I would try to make sure that I'm channeling that in the sense that, okay, I'm taking up the challenges where I know that I'm good in XYZ. So if at my firm somebody needs help with that XYZ, I know that I might be able to do it more efficiently. So let me jump in and then just do it. Whereas I
Hmm.
would probably delegate some of the work that I'm not good at, and then probably I don't need to be good at for the rest of my life to survive. Then I delegate that to somebody who is really good at it. So I think that is another one which might be also very helpful. So yeah, these are the two I'll mention because there are probably others, but two important ones.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think uh, thank you so much for talking about all your stories, sharing your anecdotes. I had a really great time. I already knew about your story, but I did not know about so many details.
Right.
And I'm sure that our viewers also enjoyed today's session. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
And
Thank you for inviting, and thanks for everyone who joined for their time to
yeah,
listen to me.
yeah. Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed today's session. And let us know what you felt about today's episode via your comments. We are always here to listen to you guys. Um, okay, then next week we are coming with a very special episode. So stay tuned and see you then. Bye.